Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, 5 tips and tricks that are going to make your day in the shop just a little bit easier. Well, these types of videos are all over the internet, and I cannot believe that in the 7, almost 8 years that I've been doing this show that I've never done one. But I thought I would this week, and that is what we're going to concentrate. So these are not earth-shattering, mind-blowing tips or anything like that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 5 things that I use in my shop that makes my life a little easier. And let's get at it with the first one. Well, the first one starts off with this issue, which is try as you might to get the sanding disc lined up with the holes. You end up with this crooked sanding disc. Now, I have the ones with the multiple holes around because of that alignment issue. But I'm going to show you how to make a simple little jig that you can align this up perfectly every single time. Well, the jig starts off with a scrap piece of 1/2-inch plywood. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to take one of the sanding discs and I'm going to mark out every one of these holes here that are in my sanding disc. Once I get them all traced out, I'm going to mark around the perimeter of the sanding disc. With that marked out, we're just going to roughly mark each one of the centers of our vent holes for our sandpaper. Then we're going to center punch each one of them. Well, I've now taken some 3/8-inch dowel, just some scrap pieces, and I have put a chamfer on one end of the dowel just over at the belt sander. From there, over to the miter box, I cut each one at a length of 1/2 inch. Then I head over back and put another chamfer and then cut another 1/2 inch piece. You're going to need a total of 8 of these, or however many holes your sanding discs have. Now at each one of our center punches, drill a 3/8 diameter by 1/4 inch hole. Once you get those done, cut this circle out over at the scroll saw. All that's left to do at this point is to put a little bit of glue in each one of these holes and glue one of our dowels chamfer side up into each one. And there you go. So what have you done here? You have essentially created yourself a sandpaper quick load jig that allows you to line up your holes perfectly every time, as well as having your discs centered on your sanding pad. So if yours has a different pattern than this, just reproduce the pattern. And you can lay multiple discs here, and when one is done, you pull it off and just line up your jig again, press it down, and there you go. Another one ready to go as quick as that. Stack 3 or 4. You can go as much as you want. So there you go. There's tip number 1, a sanding disc jig. So our next tip involves one of these. And what this is a dust chute, and it connects to your shop vac at this end. It connects to your tool by using 4 rare earth magnets. So if you needed that, say your table saw or your jointer, or for me, I use it a lot at the lathe where I connect it to the tool rest by using those magnets when I'm sanding. But what if you want to use it at your drill press, or say for me at the router table, but I have a phenolic resin table for my router and I have an aftermarket shop-made wooden table at the drill press. Well, what do? Well, they do make adapter plates for these, and I think they're around 14 bucks. Or for $1.76, you can go to your big box store and get yourself, out of their electrical department, a 4 11/16 box cover. And all you need to do is put a couple of 1/4 T-bolts in there, along with a fender washer and some shop-made jig knobs, and you have essentially created your own adapter plate to be able to use your vacuum attachment. So let's take it over to my router table and I'll show you exactly what it is that you're supposed to be doing with this thing. Now over here at the router table, for me, mine is phenolic resin. It's not magnetic. There's no metal sections here to attach the magnets of our dust chute. As well, the T-track on here is aluminum with no magnetic properties. That's where our little jig comes in, or our little adapter plate. And all you want to do is slide your T-nuts in, or your T-bolts in to where you want them, roughly. Tighten your knobs, and there you go. Magnetic properties all of a sudden here at the router table. Now, if you need more adjustability, take one of the jig knobs out. It's as simple as that. Just remove one of them, and at that point you can adjust it how you wish. If you want to put it a little more skewed like this, then you can. You just tighten down the jig knob again, and then you can relocate your dust chute. However you want to look at it, it's a great little adapter plate, and for less than $2, it's a lot cheaper than the ones you can buy in the store. So there you go, an adapter plate for your magnetic dust chute. And in case you were wondering, it works great over here at the drill press as well. Well, some of you out there are toy makers, and unless you have a circle cutter, you probably use a hole saw to make your wheels. Now, the biggest problem with hole saws is that they end up burning the wood. And the reason for that is that once you get deeper into the, in this case, plywood, the sawdust gets trapped in the kerf of our hole saw, creating friction in there. The hole saw gets hot, etc., and you end up with a burnt piece. So I'm going to cut one here, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. And we can see here on this that, mind you, it's not the sharpest hole saw in the world, but we've got some burning all the way around here where that sawdust gets trapped in there. So I'm going to show you how to alleviate it. So the first thing you want to do is make some score marks on your stock using your hole saw. Just like that. All right, so now that you've got that done, remove your hole saw from your drill press. And from here, what I like to do is I'm going to use a 1-inch Forstner bit here, and we're going to drill a through hole right on the edge of our kerf for our hole saw. So there you can see we have our 1-inch hole drilled, and you can also see that that 1-inch hole bleeds right into and incorporates the kerf of our hole saw that we were using. So now what we can do is place our hole saw back into our drill press, and what you've done essentially here is you have given a relief for the sawdust to go. You've given it somewhere to escape instead of just being trapped and burning in the kerf of the hole saw. So all you need to do from there is finish up your cutting. I just want to stop it there for a second because I just want to show you, look at where all that sawdust is going. It's going right in that hole, whereas before we were having it gather all up top here. So I'm going to finish this up and we'll compare the two results. Now normally when drilling with a hole saw, I would be starting from one end, drill halfway through, and then meet it on the other side. But I was trying to create more friction here to give a more dramatic demonstration. So we can see here where our kerf is. Look at all the sawdust that's piled up in there. It gave it somewhere for that to go, and there is no burning on our cutting. So with our other one, we can see the excessive amounts of burning there with the hole saw where the sawdust got trapped inside here. But look at the one we did where we created a relief. So there you go. There is a way to cut wheels with your hole saw without burning the crap out of them and having to do excessive sanding, which of course may misshape your wheels. So sometimes when you're working on a project, you need to drill a hole centered into the end of a dowel. For me, mostly it comes with model making. So there's a quick and easy jig that you can make in just a few seconds to be able to do this with the least amount of measuring and trial and error and that sort of thing. So the first thing that you need is you're going to need a Forstner bit that is the same diameter of your dowel. Now what you're going to need is a scrap of plywood, and we're going to set our fence to be somewhere in this plywood. It doesn't matter where, as long as you give yourself room to work. So I have a stop block set. I now have my fence set so that we can repeat this measurement, and we're just going to drill a through hole into this plywood. Now, don't move anything. Well, you can move the board that you drilled, but don't move any of your stops or your fence. And now you want to release your Forstner bit and put in the size bit of whatever size hole you need to drill in the center of that dowel. So in this case, I'm going to be drilling a 1/4 inch hole. So with that bit installed, we can now take our plywood, place our dowel into that hole, and what we're going to do is use a hand screw clamp. And we're going to very carefully just clamp down on that dowel. From there, you can just place it, your plywood that you cut the hole in, place it back up against your fence and against your stop, and now drill your 1/4 inch hole. And what you end up with very quickly is a hole that is centered on your dowel, and you didn't risk your fingers there because this was holding it from spinning. I got a little bit of spinning at the end, but that's okay, I'm not concerned. What I like is that I've got this hole drilled in place. So as long as you didn't change your fence or your stop block and you didn't have any dust at the back that was keeping your board out, you could potentially drill a hole perfectly centered. So there you go. This one here is not exactly centered. It's a tiny, tiny bit off. And the reason for that is that this is a commercially bought dowel and they're not perfectly tight in this jig. You can see there's play. So that's going to throw you off. So you want to make sure that your hole is in fact the exact same size as this dowel. But all in all, for that quick little mucking around with it, that's pretty darn close right there. Well, our last tip involves these little guys. And what that is threaded inserts. And if you've ever tried to install one of these, you know that they can be a real pain in the neck. A lot of people use a bolt that has the head cut off. I'm going to show you a different way to do it. I have a piece of threaded rod here, and it's 1/4-20 rod, the same thread count as what my insert is. I've put 2 1/4-20 nuts on here and jammed them on the thread so that they can't come off. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to place a washer, and then we're going to place our threaded insert and get it somewhat tightened on there, just finger tight. And from there, believe it or not, I'm going to mount this in my drill press. Now the reason for mounting this in the drill press is we're not going to be using the power of the drill to put this thing in. That would be crazy. But what we're going to do is we're going to utilize the chuck in order to make it so that we can get this thing in perfectly square. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the table up to match our hole. And once I get it lined up, I'm just going to turn the chuck. And you can use your handle of your drill press to assist you in the downward force, but all in all, you're just using the chuck to spin it in by hand. And what this does is it allows it to screw it in perfectly square. Normally, or sometimes when you screw these in using a socket wrench or that sort of thing, they can go in crooked. And it's always a bit of a nightmare when they do, because of course whatever screws into them at that point is now going in crooked as well. So here we go, we'll just finish this one off and we're done. So from there you just unscrew it and the washer will allow it to release without any problems. And you can see that is perfectly flush and square to our stock. If you're not sure or you don't think it is, well, you can test it by threading in your threaded rod and see whether or not it's 90 degrees to your stock. And this here looks pretty darn straight to me on all planes. So there you go. For installing threaded inserts, use a 1/4 rod with a couple jam nuts and the chuck of your drill press to ensure that this is going in perfectly square and perfectly straight. And there you have it. 5 tips and tricks that will hopefully make your woodworking a little less frustrating and help you a little bit along the way. Now guys, these are not earth-shattering tips by any means. Some of them are just straight up ingenuity, such as the sanding disc, quick loader we'll call it, or the threaded insert, or how to drill holes in the center of dowels. These are not mind-blowing. However, when I first learned the trick with the hole saws to get it to stop burning, I thought, yeah, okay, whatever you say, buddy. And then I decided I was going to try it, and I tried it, and boy, am I glad that I did, because honest to goodness, it works. You have no idea how well it works. Well, you saw there in the clip the comparison between the two, but honest to goodness, that is one of those tips or tricks that is absolute gold, especially if you're a toy maker that uses hole saws to cut your wheels. Guys, the thing with the threaded insert, I've said before about using them with jam nuts. That is absolutely nothing new. The new part is utilizing the drill press to be able to get these things to go in squarely. Basically, what happens here is when you do it by hand with the ratchet, wherever that thread grabs is where it starts to pull in. And if it starts to pull in on an angle, that's how it's going to thread for the rest of the hole. So the drill press, essentially by applying downward pressure with your levers to bring your drill press chuck down to your stock, by applying that downward pressure, it doesn't allow it to twist. It doesn't allow it to go out of square. The only way it's going to allow it to do that is if you allowed the board to lift up, and if that's the case, you don't have enough downward pressure. So that's a great little tip. Either way, guys, I hope that some of these tricks here today are something that you're going to find in your shop to be useful and helpful as, you tinker around there on the weekends. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell so that you don't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. It's been a lot of fun today. You know what? There's certain things that you learn along the way throughout the years of woodworking, and it's just more fun if you share them with everybody else. And I hope that you guys have found today's episode useful. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're going to try these for yourself, guys. And more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.